Hey guys, it's Lord of the Pogs. Last week, my family took a Disney cruise to the Bahamas, and I want to take this opportunity to tell you about all my adventures. I knew I'd have fun because I love Disney, but I never thought I'd like a cruise before, and that was always based on my limited understanding of what a cruise is really like. I'm so used to the basic vacation model. You book your room, but you still have to pay for the rest of your vacation. I've been stuck in a hotel before. Why would I confine myself to a ship? But what I found is that a cruise is a semi-all-inclusive vacation that rolls in the price of food, lodging, and entertainment. And there's so much to do, you couldn't get around to all of it even if you tried. One thing we did is we played Disney trivia, which we almost won. 18 out of 25 correct answers isn't bad. And we won Lion King trivia. We flew to Miami and stayed at the Hyatt in a neighborhood called Brickell, across from an apartment building called the Yacht Club. Just for kicks, I looked it up, and these apartments start at $3,422 a month for a one-bedroom. But Brickell is a really good neighborhood, so that was a good place to be. We asked at the front desk which was more efficient for getting around, cabs or Ubers. And they said the cabs were dropping their prices to compete with Uber, so they were pretty much the same. Taking an Uber made me really nervous at first, because with a cab you're getting a ride from a driver who works for a company, but with an Uber you're getting a ride from a stranger in their own car. But Uber was actually a lot more user-friendly than cabs. You get in a cab and tell them where you want to go and watch the meter go up. And one cab driver took us to the wrong place, so we had to pay extra for the unnecessary stop. But when you order an Uber, you put in the address of the place you want to go, and it gives you a map, which also appears on the equipment in the person's car, and it gives you the price, so there's no guessing as far as how much the trip is going to cost. You already know before you even get inside. One of the reasons I was excited to be in Miami was to experience Cuban culture, and when we got there, I found out that there was a lot of Peruvian and Colombian culture as well. We ate at the restaurant and it wasn't bad, but it wasn't worth the $150 we paid for it. I wanted to get some real Cuban food, so we ate at a place called the Bella Cuba and ordered a Cuban sandwich and Cuban coffee. Cuban coffee came in this little cup, and it actually lasted me my entire meal. It was very sweet, and it was the strongest coffee I've ever tasted. Later, when we visited Little Havana, I got some Cuban coffee of my own to bring home. One thing to look out for when you visit Miami is make sure you look over your bill before you leave a tip. I left a 20% tip before realizing that they'd already worked in an 18% gratuity. Disney required us to show proof of vaccination before boarding the ship, and we still had to test negative no more than 2 days before boarding. They offer two options for testing. You can either test at the port right before boarding, or you can use a test that they send you. They don't allow you to use over-the-counter COVID tests. They go through a third-party company that has to send you a COVID test. So once we got those in the mail, we loaded them into our suitcase and took them with us on our trip. When we got to the hotel, we had to go on a Zoom call with a woman from the Philippines who watched us take our tests and prove that we were all negative. Disney also lets you choose your own boarding time. So we opted to board at noon because our stateroom wouldn't be ready until 3, and we wanted some time to explore the ship, but we also wanted to give ourselves enough time in the morning to make sure that we were all packed and situated and give ourselves time to get to the port. We arranged for a ride from our hotel to the port with Disney, but we found out the day before that the ride was happening at 10 o'clock in the morning. In the boarding instructions that were emailed to us also the day before, they said don't arrive at the port before your boarding time. So that brought up the question, if we got there 2 hours before our boarding time, would they tell us to go back to the hotel? Would they make us wait outside? Or should we order an Uber even though we already paid for the service? We used the service and got there 2 hours early, and it was just fine. When we arrived at the port, the first thing that happened was they put tags on our luggage, just like checking a bag at the airport, so they could be delivered to our room for us, which was nice so we didn't have to lug them all over the ship. The next thing that happened was we were issued these. This is your Key to the World card, which you have to take with you everywhere you go. It's your room key, but it's also your credit card if you want to buy souvenirs at the shop or snacks at a movie. You need it to reboard the ship if you get off at port in the Bahamas, and they scan your Key to the World card every time you get your picture taken with a character. We boarded on Deck 3 at the Grand Staircase. It took me a couple of days to get comfortable with the layout of the ship and where everything was, but here's the basic deck plan. Deck 1 had a number of lobbies, pretty boring. Deck 2 had some staterooms and the Enchanted Garden restaurant. Deck 3 had the Grand Staircase where we boarded, the Animator's Palette and Royal Palace restaurants, some shops and the Walt Disney Theater. Deck 4 had a number of bars and lounges, a smaller theater called Buena Vista, and a balcony seating for the Walt Disney. Deck 5 had some more staterooms, balcony seating for Buena Vista, the Oceaneers Kids Club, and Bibbidi Boppidi Boutique. Decks 6 through 10 were just staterooms. Deck 11 had private cabanas, public pools, free ice cream and drinks, the buffet, and the spa. Deck 12 contained more staterooms and the Paolo and Remy restaurants. And decks 13 and 14 were the concierge lounges in the funnel. When we boarded, the Oceaneers Club was hosting an open house so parents could see where their kids would be playing. The kids get a wristband, and they have to swipe in order to get in, and swipe again in order to get out. The staff also asks for a password, so only someone who's authorized can drop the kids off and pick them up. When they go in or come out, the kids wash their hands in this really cool sink where you put your hands in, and it sprays your hands with a water-soap combo for 12 seconds. So when the water shuts off, you know your hands are washed, and then you just dry. I'm actually jealous I didn't get to play in the Star Wars room. They have a life-size R2-D2 behind a glass case that reacts every time you walk by, and an area of the room that looks like the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon with the video going, so it looks like you're flying. You can flip switches, push buttons, and pull levers, and nothing does anything. It turns on a few lights here, turns off a few lights there. They had scheduled meet and greets with characters throughout the day, and we got to meet Woody and Jessie from Toy Story. But there just wasn't enough time in the day to do everything we wanted to do and keep coming back to meet more characters. But throughout the cruise, more characters showed up to greet passengers in the Grand Staircase area, and frequently we'd make a pass there on our way somewhere else to see who was around. We were told our room wouldn't be ready until 3, but someone else told us they would be ready at 1, just our luggage wouldn't show up until 3. So we got to our room around 1, and it was ready, and our luggage showed up a little bit later, around 2 or 2:30. Cruise ships don't really have classes anymore. I've watched Titanic a lot, and I used to play Titanic Adventure Out of Time, where they have maids and room stewards, and that's a real thing. Our room steward was a man named Jojo from the Philippines, but they don't call him that anymore. They call them stateroom attendants. Every night during the dinner service, he'd prepare our room for the night and leave treats and fold our blanket to look like an animal, like a penguin or an octopus. We had dinner reservations at different restaurants on the ship, and our dinner service was at 5:45. We had the same table number each night, 107, and the same waitstaff. Our waiters were a woman named Eunice from the Philippines and a man named Sunny from India. When we arrived, all the servers were lined up in vests and ties, and there was a head server in a full suit waiting to greet us and take us to our table. A few years ago, we ate at Hell's Kitchen in Las Vegas, and I remember signing the bill. It was over $300, and I didn't even care because it was so good. But this food was better. Step aside, Gordon Ramsay. I'm so used to going to a restaurant and they charge it to your room, but that's not how it works on a cruise. When you book the reservation, you already paid for it. If you want another entree or more than one appetizer, you order it with no extra charge. The first night we ate at the Enchanted Garden, which was inspired by Alice in Wonderland. The next 2 nights we ate at the Royal Palace, which was inspired by Beauty and the Beast. Along the walls they had pictures of Disney princesses in their normal clothes and in their ball gowns. In another area of the restaurant, they had pictures of Disney princesses paired up with their respective princes. The fourth night and the following morning before disembarking, we ate at the Animator's Palette. Day 2, we arrived in the Bahamas. I wanted to see it come over the horizon, which I didn't quite, but I took this picture as soon as I got to the top deck. I read somewhere that the horizon is 60 miles away, but according to a Live Science article that I read today, the horizon is 3 miles away. I'm not sure where I heard 60. But in the picture I took, Nassau is probably about 2.5 miles away. When we docked, we opted to stay on the ship. I've heard lots about scammers that wait for tourists to deboard and try to separate them from their money. There's the bump and grab, which is your basic pickpocket. There's a taxi scam where taxi drivers will claim their meter is broken, so they can charge whatever they want. Or they'll take a longer route to make a more expensive trip. Before you get in a taxi, make sure you ask the driver how much the trip will cost. And make sure their meter is running. If it's not, insist that they turn it on or find another cab. There's the ATM scam, where a scammer will offer you tips on how to avoid fees. Then, when it dispenses your money, they'll take it. You can avoid this by using ATMs in busy areas, or taking cash with you so you don't need an ATM in the first place. Then there's the hair braiding scam, where someone will offer to braid your hair and set a fee. Then at the end, they'll increase the fee, either because it took longer than they thought, or because of the length of the hair. But we decided we didn't want to encounter it doing that, so we just stayed on the ship, and we had a pool day and a deck day. My daughter spent a fair amount of time at her kids club, just like she did every day. And my wife and I saw a live performance of Beauty and the Beast, which was so good, and we saw the new Disney movie Lightyear. We decided not to bring my daughter because we weren't sure if it would be appropriate for her age, but it totally would have been. Day 3, we docked at Castaway Cay, spelled K, pronounced K, Disney's private Bahamian island. It's 1,000 acres, but only 55 of it's being used, mostly along the beach. I took a panorama of the ship after we got off, and it looks big, but it's even bigger when you're right up next to it. It's 12 decks high. Where I live, there is a college dormitory called the Tower, which is 11 stories high. And it's the closest thing we have to a skyscraper. Standing next to the ship, it's taller than the tower. I can't even joke about how incredibly massive this thing is. It's 2 decks taller than the Titanic, 4 if you include the funnels, and over 200 feet longer. Transportation is available on trams, which transport guests between different parts of the island. My wife and I had a couples massage, while my daughter played at a kids club called Scuttle's Cove. We had a barbecue lunch at a restaurant called Cookies, named for the cook in Atlantis: The Lost Empire. Then I took my daughter snorkeling. Snorkeling is interesting because there's apparently a lot of artifacts on the bottom waiting to be discovered. I found a plaque that says "Keep on swimming," as well as parts of a shipwreck like cannons and pottery. There's also apparently Ariel's statue of Prince Eric, a Dumbo train car, and a submarine from the old Disney World ride, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Day 4 was our day at sea. I got a hot towel shave at the spa. I'd had a hot towel shave before by a woman named Tiffany at the Venetian in Las Vegas. And my barber here was also a woman named Anna from the Philippines. At the Venetian, she used a straight razor, and I could feel how sharp it was against my skin. She did 3 passes, one with the grain, one against the grain, and one across the grain. Anna used a Gillette 5-blade razor, and she only made 1 pass. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't as close as the straight razor. My wife and I had Sunday brunch at a restaurant called Palos on deck 12 of the ship. It's a fancy restaurant with a dress code. No shorts, no sandals, no t-shirts. There were people wearing polo shirts, and I wore jeans. I think it would have been cool to get a Remy's since it's inspired by Ratatouille, but it's about 3 times more expensive with a stricter dress code. I would have had to wear a tie, which I did anyway, and I would have had to wear slacks. At brunch was the first time I felt the swaying of the ship, which was a weird feeling. I couldn't really feel it until someone pointed it out to me, and then I could never unfeel it. In the afternoon, my daughter got a Disney princess makeover at Bibbidi Boppidi Boutique. They hook you up with a makeover artist called your fairy godmother. They have a selection of Disney princesses to choose from, and my daughter wanted Mulan, but they didn't have that one available, so she chose Princess Tiana from The Princess and the Frog. They did her hair, her makeup, and her nails, and she got to keep the dress. I started to get cabin fever. It's hard to explain what it feels like. It's not claustrophobic because you're not in an enclosed space. It's almost like claustrophobia, but inside out. That's the best way I can think of to describe it. Out on the deck, we could see a few ships in the distance, but it's a weird sensation to look in all directions and see nothing but water. I spotted a tiny dot on the horizon, so small you almost couldn't look right at it. So I got out my camera and zoomed in 30 times, and then zoomed in 100 times, and it was a little sailboat. It made me think of the Truman Show, where he sails out to sea and runs into the edge. The night before disembarking, you have an option. You can pack all your bags and leave them outside your door with a tag to be picked up by your stateroom attendant and taken back to the port for you. Or you can take them yourself. Since we wanted to go to Animator's Palette for breakfast, we decided to have our stateroom attendant take them for us, so we wouldn't have to lug them all around. But that meant having everything packed and ready to go by 10:30 the night before. I really didn't like rushing and just throwing things in suitcases, but it was really nice to not have to worry about it until we were off the ship. Thanks for watching. I recommend cruises, and I really recommend a Disney cruise. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, but if you have the opportunity, I highly recommend it. If you liked this video, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and hit that little bell in the corner to get notifications for more videos like this one.